I'm glad at least we got 24 hours of seemingly, I don't know, somehow thinking that we were in the race whatsoever, in the hunt, whatever you want to call it. I'm glad I got to enjoy like 24 hours of that. I was even scoreboard watching for a little bit there. It was fun. It was fun to live in delusion for a little bit.
You could still live in delusion. It just gets more delusional. Live in delusion like, some other franchises we know out there who live in delusion all the time. It's a lot more fun. It doesn't take as much of a toll on your mental health.
No, no, it really doesn't. If you ignore everything bad, then nothing bad can get to you. But
Exactly.
But 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 who cares? They gave us a little bit of a reality check last night. So good to be back on I guess back on the ground, back in a regular sense of mind. Imagine if they won, this probably would have been a podcast that would have quickly become outdated because we would have been dragged back to earth at some point in the next week.
They
We
were
would have been
close.
deluded. We would have been high on the feelings of we're gonna make a push. We might do this, and then it would have ended very soon, probably.
They were close. It did look like that game was more them trying not to lose, and it finally caught up to them at the end. It's a really good Winnipeg Jets team. Can't say the same about their fan base. You're one of the best teams in the Central, and you can't even fill a 16,000 seat arena, which is kind of it shocks me, but I don't know. Just more mid, we're still 500.
Was it the draft episode right after they took Benson and we were talking about how him and Savoy both played for Winnipeg and what was it? Christian was like, would you rather it was something Winnipeg or would you rather have $10? It was like some joke he made. Would you rather play in Winnipeg or have $10?
It's
Yeah,
fun. It's funny though because if there's in an alternative reality, if there's another podcast out there that's just like ours out of a different city, they'd be saying the same thing about Buffalo. No doubt in my mind.
Do you think there was more of you out there, people like you, the purists?
Oh yeah, of course. You have to have some of those people out there.
Mm-hmm. Makes people like JP and I look smart. Anyways, welcome back to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah,
I'm Christian.
I'm JP.
and as always, we'll be talking to you about all things Buffalo Sabres hockey and even a little bit of the wider NHL. Although this week, probably not going to be a little bit, probably going to be quite a decent bit because we are less than a week until the NHL trade deadline. Currently, as we're recording, it is Monday night, and the trade deadline is at 3 o'clock on Friday, the 8th. So, one of the most exciting weeks of the year. Everybody looks forward to it, no matter what position your team is in, whether it's bottom of the league, middle of the pack, or at the top of the pedestal. It's an exciting week for any NHL fans. And we'll be talking about that. And then obviously, we'll be talking about this last stretch of games that the Sabres played, some of the storylines going with the team right now, going into some of the trade rumors heading into the deadline. Kyle Oposo, Erik Johnson, some stuff that came out about Kevin Adams today. And then we'll jump around the NHL and talk about some of the headlines, including some recent news, which is Lindy Ruff being relieved of his duties today by the New Jersey Devils. So it should be a fun one. Um, it's one of those weeks you look forward to the whole calendar year.
Yeah, I always enjoyed trade deadline day. Even if, well, every year the Sabres are pretty much out of it, but it's always interesting to see what direction they want to go in. And it can give you a kind of a glimpse into what the future could hold as to how they feel about the franchise. So I wouldn't expect them to be heavy sellers or anything, but um, it could go either way. They're a 500 team. They're average. They're not going to sell off anything more than probably any UFAs that they don't plan on re-signing. Maybe a Greenway will get thrown in there, but who knows? Not
day.
out the door, Jameson. I'm talking about a trade because last deadline, not much happened, and then that Jordan Greenway trade happened. But maybe we see another one of those come into play, not him leaving, which
Hey,
could also happen.
Kevin made 5 trades last year, and the trade deadline was insane last year. So it's gonna be hard to beat that. I think last year's already beat it because weren't all like the big trades like leading up to Friday.
Yeah, it was the most. They beat the record, I think, for most trades before the deadline. But I think all the exciting ones were done before deadline day, and deadline day was still fine. You still had your moves. Obviously, that was the day the Sabres got Greenway, but it's going to be hard to live up to last year. But the trade board is pretty stacked. I mean, Chris Tanev has really been the only one to go so far. Obviously, you had Ilya Lyubushkin go 24 hours later, but big names are still there. Jake Gensel looks like he's going to get traded. Noah Hannafin looks like it. Even the yearly Jacob Chikrin conversation, he might be on the move again. So should be some maybe less trades, but maybe more high caliber. But before we get into all that fun stuff, before we kind of go down the Sabres roster heading in, let's kind of quickly talk about everything that's happened since then. So to quickly surmise everything, the 500 team stays 500. They go 2-2 in the last week. They've played Florida, Tampa Bay, Vegas, and Winnipeg. Starting off the week, they gave Florida a good fight, but came up short on national television. They lost that one 3-2. Came back on the Florida trip, beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in overtime 3-2. Come into KeyBank Center on Saturday night on national television. Give the Vegas Golden Knights, who were without Jack Eichel, a ass whooping with a 7-2 victory, giving some excitement and some dwindling hope that maybe this season could somehow turn into a success. And 24 hours later, they blow a 2-1 lead in the third period to the Winnipeg Jets and lose that one 5-2 in regulation.
The roller coaster season continues, just up and down, and no semblance of consistency anywhere. I will say, I was saying the other night, after the Winnipeg loss, that's a game. If they were playing the last stretch of games from, I want to say, when the clock struck midnight on December 31st, 2023, and the calendar changed to 2024. If they had been playing like they had since the start of this new year up until now, A, they'd be in a playoff spot, and B, I wouldn't mind a loss like that to Winnipeg because you're coming off a back-to-back, you're exhausted, you're obviously getting like outworked by a veteran team who's got talent, and there's a reason they're one of the top teams in the coming out of the West. That's a game I don't mind, dropping. Like going 2-2 in this last stretch, these are good teams. I'd be more excited if in you know, the early months you just, put away the teams that you should have, like Montreal that one time and Anaheim those 2 times. I know one of the games is more recent, but either way, it's just if you take care of beating the bad teams, losing to a good team every now and again, going 500 in a stretch, it's not as big a deal as we would make it out to be as it is right now. But since we're already so far out of it and every point counts, it's like, it's just a backbreaker. Everything's a gut punch when you lose.
Yeah, I was gonna say like this stretch of 4 games, like we faced 4 playoff teams, debatably 2 or 3 contenders. So we had very tough competition and we kept up with each of them. We had some good games. We blew a game. If this was earlier in the season, we'd be really happy with how we played, considering the teams we played. But since it's crunch time, we can't just take being happy after a loss. We need the points. And last night was a game where you needed to get at least 1 point. And with them getting 0, I mean, that just dwindles the hope a lot further.
I think a lot of people do forget that Winnipeg is, I mean, now they're first in the Central Division. Obviously, they're in that race with Dallas, but, it's hard to, I guess, kind of I guess people kind of forget that because, look, it is mainly off the back of Connor Hellebuck. He's been carrying that team all season. But I think that, as we've seen, it's not just good goaltending, not just phenomenal goaltending that can take you to the top of the division. The Sabres have a goalie who's doing just as well as Connor Hellebuck, and they can barely stay above 500. That said, it's just a game you need to get to overtime there. First of all, it needs to be mentioned, the scoreboard absolutely fell their way yesterday. The Capitals lost to the Arizona Coyotes, who have won one in their last 15 going into that game. They beat them in regulation. The Devils got their asses kicked by the LA Kings, and that would subsequently get their coach fired. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins, they got their asses kicked by the Edmonton Oilers. So you had every single team losing regulation. You had at least some sliver of a chance to like, that is, there's not many perfect scoreboard days, and you had the chance to at least get something. If you take that game to overtime and you lose, or you lose in the shootout, you might say, man, we had that lead in the third, but you'd be like, hey, we got 3 of 4 against Vegas and Winnipeg, and we were able to move up in the standings. It would have separated you from Pittsburgh. It would have gotten you closer to New Jersey. And it
still helps, though.
You weren't able to seal a deal.
Them losing still helps.
Yeah, no, it helps, but it's too late. Like, if it was February 4th, maybe you could still be like, all right, you know what, they didn't lose any ground. You can still rebound. But at this point, like, your losses, the amount of losses you can have up until the end of the season, I mean, I wouldn't quite say you can count them on one hand, but we're getting to that point. Regulation losses, definitely.
I'd say you could count them on one hand. I was going to say 4 or 5 more. It's completely over.
So it's not, I think it doesn't officially kill their season, but that was the type of game they needed to take full advantage of, and they didn't.
I did see a tweet yesterday, and the guy made a pretty good point. He said, if the Buffalo Sabres just win every single game until the end of the year, they will be Stanley Cup champions. Like, it's that easy. It's just that simple. I never thought of it that way. Just win every single game, sweep the playoffs, 16-0, you win. That's it.
I mean, geez, now that you bring that up, I mean, changes the way I think.
I think we should be buyers.
We're back.
And just like that, we're back in. Yeah, I really hate the narrative that people will say. Paul Hamilton talks about this a lot. It's how the Sabres just can't get to games to overtime. And I really hate when people say that, because, it's an intangible. Like, there's nothing you can change to do that. You just have to do it. But I think yesterday was a perfect example. You just needed to do it. Both teams are tired. You're playing a Rick Bonus hockey team, so it's not a fun hockey game at all. It's just a game. It's a hockey game that happened. You just can't. You just somehow gotta get that one to the end of regulation, and it stinks. With the year he's having, it's the loss is 100% not on Luukkonen. He made his saves. He even made a huge save on Kyle Connor to give them a chance after Winnipeg took the lead. But obviously the two last goals were not great. And even the first one, that glove hand, that you could kind of see that third Winnipeg goal coming. That glove hand was not sharp at all. Even that whole first sequence on the first goal started because he wasn't able to glove one down. And I don't want to fall back into any old habits of criticizing Luukkonen, blaming him for losses. It's not on him. But obviously, if he makes even just the last save, he makes that save 10 times out of 10. Like, that save is, that's the type of goal he lets in last year. It just came at a really bad time, and might have been even a bit of his exhaustion, which I mean,
I was gonna say,
he's played 19 of the last 21 games.
do
That
you
is
think
crazy.
do you think he plays against Toronto on Wednesday? It's another
Oh, you have
back-to-back.
to. You absolutely have to. If this team still believes they're in it, you have to start him that game. Toronto is red hot. That Nashville game is a scheduled loss. They're not winning that game. If they somehow do, that's amazing. But think about it. I mean, you have to go from Toronto. I mean, think about this logically. That game goes till 9:30, 10 o'clock. Okay, they're probably out of that arena by 11. By the time they get to Nashville, at best, what is it? Like 12:30, 1 in the morning, probably after that. By the time they get to the hotel, get to bed, it's probably like 2 in the morning.
2:30 probably, yeah.
So that's not going to be enough rest time for Luukkonen. And the only reason he played back-to-back this weekend is because they kicked Vegas's ass and his workload was so small. You're not going to be able to get away with that. So that Nashville game, if they pull that out, that'd be impressive, but that's a scheduled loss. You got to give Comrie that start.
Yeah, that was my thought process on that too. It's a Comrie game against Nashville, so we'll see how they do.
All right, let's hop into some of the storylines that have kind of emerged from this past week. And let's start with Erik Johnson. So that Florida game, he receives what? I think 3 shifts. 3 shifts were the final total, or maybe it was 3 minutes. He received 3 minutes of ice time. So we all saw what happened on the first goal. Florida comes up the ice 3-on-2. Now, JP, Christian, you guys are both defensemen. When I play hockey, I'm a forward. So take me through this. So when you're on a 3-on-2 and you take your man, do you ever just grab him and drag him over to the other side of the ice, taking your partner on your left side out of the play and opening up the slot for the opposing forward? Has that ever had, is that what you guys were taught?
I've played with a lot of meatheads as my partners, and I don't think I've ever seen that. And Christian was on my team, all right? I don't got the brightest teammates. I don't think I've ever seen that in any league, in any team I've ever played on. I had no idea what he was even trying to do. And even I think one of the announcers, I'm not even sure, because that was a nationally televised game. I think they were like, oh yeah, Erik Johnson was just, he's taking his guy. To do what? He left the lane completely open. The slot was completely wide open after he did that.
He took the guy, all right. He got him, and I think he just forgot to hit the brakes. Yeah, I was not taught that. With all I've played with JP and my fair share of other people that we have no connections to, and out of all the defensive partners I've ever had, I've never seen something like that happen at any level. I mean, you see some bad stuff here and there, but that was just, I feel like his brain just shut off. He just kept going. I was completely baffled by that, especially coming out of a professional.
It was a weird play. It got a lot of, in the moment, everybody saw that, just kind of looked at the replay. It's just kind of like, what are you doing? If it's a one-off thing, people probably don't care that much, but it's Erik Johnson. He hasn't had the best season here, and the Sabres were up 1-0 to that point, and just like that, the game's tied, and it's just it was a questionable play. So then his next shift is on the penalty kill, and Matt Tkachuk has the puck on the wall. Now, if Matt Tkachuk has the puck on the wall, that means one thing: there's nobody parked in front of the net. Now, there was somebody back door, and that's who Matt Tkachuk was trying to pass it to, but there was no one in front. And Erik Johnson holds his stick out, tries to deflect the pass, which he does, into his own net. And just like that, he's cost the Sabres 2 goals. Now, the second one, it's sort of bad luck. But at the same time, it's kind of it's kind of a lazy play. He's just kind of throwing his stick out there. He's not really challenging Tkachuk. I don't know. It's not a good play. And by that point, you're 5 minutes in, you were winning 1-0, and now this guy has kind of cost you 2 goals. Don Granato does probably what he should have done a long time ago.
Weeks
and
ago.
He makes the guy pay for his consequences. He sits him for the rest of the game. Now, he comes out after the game and he says, Erik Johnson's not feeling his best. He's not 100%. So, you buy that he wasn't at practice the next day. He let him stay home, supposedly to, cure his ailment. But comes out a few days later. I think Jeff Merrick was actually the first one to say, he's like, yeah, they're definitely holding him out for trade protection. And then before the Vegas game, Don Granato basically says the same thing, saying that it's a peculiar time of year, so we're going to hold him out. Now, look, he could be telling the truth. Maybe he was sick. I mean, we know there was a flu bug going around the locker room. I know it hit Comrie. It's that time of season. That said, I just don't, if he was really that not healthy, would they really have played him against Florida? Against literally the best. I mean, right now, they are the best team in the NHL. And they played a 40% defenseman. I just don't buy it. I think he sat Erik Johnson. And I think that's notable. It wasn't a healthy scratch. It wasn't that. He sat a tenured, respected vet for 3 periods, essentially. He played 5 minutes, not even. And I do kind of think that's notable. And I think, the Sabres have 2 more games this week. Erik Johnson's not going to play in either of them.
No, I'd be surprised if he was in the lineup at all.
Good luck to whatever team trades for him.
I will say this entire segment, JP's had the biggest grin on his face. He's had the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. As soon as we started talking about Erik Johnson, the smirk that came across this kid's face. You talk about the cat that ate the canary. He was so happy to bring up how bad Erik Johnson has been. And I don't blame him because I think it's a funny topic too. But I know that grin's going to go away when we talk about the Krebs situation in a little bit.
So Johnson is, I think, all but gone. I think if there was any player on the Sabres roster that we can say with, nothing's 100%, but if there's anything as close to that, it's going to be Johnson. Kevin Adams admitted, I think, when he talked to Fairburn, maybe? I think Fairburn, or maybe it was Lance Lysowski. He said his, teams have been calling about him. And, it just seems like for the longest time, he's been the one guy that everybody's been sure he's going to be on the move. So that Florida game, it's looking like his last ever as a Sabre. And, it kind of stinks because, he's a real good dude. He's not, he could have complained after that Florida loss. He came into Buffalo really excited to work with this core. It just hasn't worked out. And I think we all know that. I think if you were to go online and share the opinion that you are sad to see Erik Johnson go, I think your mentions would be flooded and maybe even your house would be in danger of having some eggs thrown at it. So it does sort of, it always stinks when something doesn't work out. It stinks to see a player not doing well, and especially when they want to. He came out with that quote a few days ago saying that he wishes he would be helping this team more. He knows he's not. He knows he's not playing good. It's just one of those things. It just wasn't meant to be. Very Eric Stahl-esque, if you ask me.
Yeah, he's definitely a Sabre of all time.
He is. Yeah, it sucks, and we've had a ton of these, so I know we're all completely used to these types of guys. And you could probably say that about most guys, is that they wanted to help out as much as they did. But at the end of the day, they didn't. And, you could be the best. You could be the nicest guy in the world. You could be the Eric Comrie of defensemen. And it just, it's a business at the end of the day.
All right. One more thing before we get into the Krebs stuff. I think we've slowly but surely, and this is, I think, been the main catalyst, I think, was actually the Jack Coyne injury. This team is struggling to create offense again. And I remember when we came out of that All-Star break, and we kind of took another look at their numbers since the Leafs game back in December. It showed some really positive stuff. They haven't been able to match that. Now, the Vegas game they were able to. That was, you don't need to see the numbers after that game to recognize that the offense was buzzing that game. Every other game since then, it's felt like a slog. The Florida game, they were not able to generate much until the third period. The Tampa game, I mean, I don't even think the Tampa game was a fun game to watch. Somehow they won, but and then the Winnipeg game, which you can chalk up to 4 and 6 back to back, whatever you want. It sort of feels like they're struggling to create again, and I really do not like the lines that Granato has constructed currently at 5-on-5.
I agree with that.
And it's funny because they gave Vegas that 7-2 ass whooping, but I don't know. I think the Winnipeg game, you saw much more of what I was fearing. Like I don't think Jordan Greenway belongs with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch.
No, not at all.
They had one good period with those lines. Like the first two periods, we were all talking about how that, Greenway shouldn't be up there, and that's nothing against him. He just shouldn't be our top line player. And our lines, they just have no chemistry right now, which is not helping. But I mean, the whole team's just not producing. So I said last episode how it's either going to be a good thing or a bad thing that we haven't been scoring a ton. That either there's a explosion coming, or it's just going to keep happening. And we had our offensive explosion game, but we'll see if it keeps happening. But the lines they're just not working. There's not a single line going right now. I mean, the fourth line was good last night, but that's not much to say.
Yeah, there's only so much shakeup you could do to a roster over the course of a season. Honestly, the Sabres do it all the time, but it's like there's only so much you could do before it becomes repetitive. And also, I think we've also gotten to a point in the season where even rotating the lines, I feel like these guys, just the mental fatigue they must be having with, I wouldn't say like learning how to play with a new guy, because you're a professional. You should be able to do that with anyone, but just knowing that the lines are constantly being jumbled and you're going into every practice and you're just like, oh, who am I playing with now? It's not good for chemistry. It's definitely not good for, the overall vibes of the team. And earlier in the season, I made a comparison to a manual transmission car with how this team was functioning. And to where like they didn't know how to drive it and they kept stalling out and kept restarting it, and they just had to get it going and they'd be good to go. Well, with everything that's gone on and shaking up the lineup so much, you're overheating the engine here. It's like the engine's smoking right now. So you better pull over and try and fix it at the deadline if you want, or you just take it into the shop right now and hopefully it's ready next season.
You talk about going into a practice wondering who you're going to play with. Look, these big line changes, they came before the game.
Yeah, that's even worse.
It wasn't even, the Tampa game is when a bunch of them started. And then, I don't know. It doesn't feel fully optimized. It doesn't feel like they're playing to their strengths. I am sick of treating JJ Peterka like he is not the best forward on the roster this season. How many shifts have him and Tage Thompson gotten together? How many? How many reps has he gotten on the first power play unit? Look, first of all, the second power play unit scored arguably the Sabres' goal of the season last night.
Mm-hmm.
But I know he hasn't been good. He hasn't been great on the power play, but who has been? Other than Rasmus Dahlin, who has been effective on the power play this season? I'm sorry, it's just something that's been bothering me. This is this guy's leading. He's tied for the leading goals. He's been by far. I mean, Casey Middlestad hasn't been playing his most inspired hockey this last stretch, and neither has Peterka. But I would argue Peterka's been their most impressive player this entire season, and they don't. I don't know. It's funny. It's funny watching Winnipeg because it's much of the same with Ehlers, and it's been that way for years. Like, this guy is just a stud. He absolutely carries that team, and he's getting like third line ice time. Now, it's not that bad for Peterka, but I don't know. Like, there's 5 minutes left in the game. You're looking for a jolt. Why is Jordan Greenway still out there? Why not switch him and Peterka? I don't know. And
I feel like
this leads right into the Krebs conversation because with like 2 minutes left in the game, Erik Robinson and Zemgus Girgensons, who had great games, go out there with Dylan Cousins. Peyton Krebs is the one that gets set in that situation.
I feel like we're finding a common theme here. I think this is all kind of stemming back to one person. I don't know. I've become much more, questionable as to the decisions Don Granato has made over the course of this season. I can't really knock him for the system change at the beginning because it's something that most of us wanted to see. We wanted to see a more defensive style of hockey, but the overhaul didn't help his case. Switching back helped, but now the roster decisions, the way you handled pulling Luukkonen in the Florida game.
I mean, dude, that's a
sitting
problem.
Krebs.
That's persisted for years.
Yeah,
ever since he's become head coach, he has no idea how to pull the goalie. The Vegas game got me like back on the hype train for 24 hours. That Florida game, I was watching, just to watch. And by the end of it, I'm screaming at my television. There's 2 minutes left. The Tage line, okay, they didn't have the puck. They didn't have direct possession, but they were in the Florida zone for a good 30 seconds. He didn't pull the goalie. Florida gets it out. The Sabres taken off. Then they try to pull Luukkonen. Then they kind of do, but then it's called. They get called on an offside with like a minute left, and then they have to use their timeout. Then they lose the draw. Florida has possession. They can't get possession in their own zone until there's about 20 seconds left, and then they had like one good chance, and that was the game. I mean, that had me irate, and like I haven't been that angry probably since, I don't know, a few months ago when I still thought the season was alive. I mean, it's one of those things that has always killed me with him. A lot of people see it too.
Could you believe he's now the sixth longest tenured head coach after Lindy Ruff got fired?
Is he sixth now?
He's sixth. Right. He is sixth now.
Wow.
The Buffalo Sabres head coach is sixth and longest tenured. So, I mean, they don't make the playoffs, which they're probably not going to. I really think the writing's on the wall for this guy. Like, it's been long enough. It really has. I know you came into a bad situation, but this was the season. You had last season to have those no expectations and have a good wave to push into this season. This season, going into October, there were expectations that needed to be met, and they've not been met by any stretch.
If it was like last year and even a little bit of this year where injuries killed them, or the goaltending was terrible again. And, if last year just repeated itself this year and they missed again, I think, like, I could be on board with it, but it's been regression in the worst way. Like, everything that made them good has now made them bad. And the only thing saving them from not being in the basement is Vezina caliber goaltending, essentially. I mean, at least since the shortly before the new year, that's what they've been getting, and they haven't been doing anything with it. All right. Let's get into the Krebs conversation. So all of last episode, you probably could have named the episode the Peyton Krebs episode because we spent a lot of time, I guess, taking a victory lap over the fact that finally this guy that we all collectively still believed in, got his shot and was, taking advantage of it. It wasn't a world beater, but he was getting his shot, looking good, and finally got rewarded in that Carolina game. The Sabres lose to the Panthers. And look, it's a close game. They lose 3-2. They get kind of, for 2 periods of the game, they get kind of outplayed by the best team in the league. Close the game good, but, come up short. The Tampa game comes around on Thursday, and the pregame lineup comes out about 15 minutes before puck drop, and there's some lineup changes. Most notably, Peyton Krebs gets sent back to the fourth line with Erik Robinson and with Zemgus Girgensons. Now, I know I'm just going to let JP.
Yeah.
I'll let him take the reins from here because he's really wanted to speak about this at this point. I'll give my thoughts in a bit.
I also defer to JP.
This is where if we were a more adult friendly podcast, I'd be swearing up a storm because I like Donnie, what the F are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, he's arguably, Krebs has been one of your best players this last few weeks. He finally got elevated to the second line basically and was playing awesome. Okay, I understand that line wasn't producing, but they were putting up a ton of chances. They were looking good. Krebs was flying. The chemistry was flowing. And you just get rid of that right away. Like, what are you doing? I don't. You finally give him a shot, and then you just send him right back down. It makes no sense. It boggles my mind. It's just idiotic. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, what is he thinking? I would love to hear what he's thinking. And the fact that the one game, was it the Lightning game too, when he got benched? He was arguably our best player. No, analytically, he was our best player, and he didn't play at all in the third period.
I think he was one shift.
Yeah,
one shift.
He put up a ton of chances. He was finding the seams. He had some really good passes that led to some really good chances. Oh, and then, just bench him. It wasn't one of his better nights. Like, I don't know what he was watching that game because everybody was like, he was our best player. He was looking great. And then, like you mentioned last night, he didn't get benched, but Cousins took his spot on the fourth line with 2 minutes left. The Krebs had an assist that led to our goal. Like, it boggles my mind. Like, give him a freaking shot. He's already proved that he can, and he just sent him right back down on the fourth line to rot with Girgensons and Robinson. And he still looked really good. He's like debatably, he's been like our best player recently.
Yeah, he kind of carried that line. He kind of carried that line in
that line
Winnipeg.
Was awesome last night.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And it's like, if Donnie is going to be our head coach next year, and for whatever reason, he still has a vendetta against Krebs, if he's going to Kruger Krebs like Kruger did to Skinner, then just trade him. I don't care. Trade him, okay? Because if you're just going to misuse him consistently, there's no point in having him on the team. Just get rid of him, okay? He has a lot of value. He's a good player. He's going to be a very good middle six forward in this league. But I don't understand how Donnie does not know how to use him. He's had him for 2 or 3 years and just has refused to give him any shots. Then he gives him a shot and takes him off it within a few games. It's mind-boggling. It's really idiotic. And there's a lot of other moves on why Donnie's been pissing me off recently. But his handling of Krebs really leads me to I don't want him as our coach next year because it's really dumb. Like, Krebs should be our third line center going into next year, but I have no faith that Donnie will give him that chance.
I think, didn't someone say something like Don Granado was saying, it was kind of like that Herb Brooks quote. It was like, I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones, when he was like making his decisions on who to send out there.
He was saying how
it was a little philosophical.
Who they were playing, how they were playing, that factored into who was getting sent out there.
Right. But with this Krebs situation, I feel like it gets solved in one of two ways. One, well, I mean, other than trading him off the team, it's one, you don't have that fourth line next year, and you just bring in more young talent. You don't have the the big boy line. You don't have Girgensons. You don't have Robinson. Um, maybe playing with Greenway, but if you're gonna play him with Greenway, you need someone who's gonna like you need that Olafson type. You need that just pure goal scorer to play with him. So it either starts in the front office with Kevin Adams restructuring how the bottom six is going to be, or, and this is probably the simpler way to do it, you just fire Don Granato and then you bring someone in who you know is going to use him in a way that isn't going to Ralph Kruger him.
I mean, what more can the kid do? I mean, he gets
I
put
don't
on the
blame him.
fourth line. After he was arguably our best player against Tampa, then Don Granato comes out and says, "Oh, I just didn't think he was having a good night." Like, what the hell do you think Krebs was thinking? Like, then he
I
gets
don't know.
demoted to the fourth line, and the fourth line was actually one of our better lines in the next few games. He gets in a freaking fight. Like, he's doing everything that Donnie wants him to, and Donnie's giving him no respect, and he's giving him no reward. It's really pissing me off.
And the funny thing is, it's like, why is it taking him this long to move him up the roster in general? He's been on the fourth line for as long as I can remember going back to last season. It's just, I feel like originally he just used him as it was like, okay, it's the guy we called up from the AHL. He was in the Eichel trade. He has talent, but he could be raw. Maybe we'll stick him with some of the more veteran guys, ease him into the league. Completely fine with that. But you're over a year later. You're over a season later, an off season later. Practices, games, everything. And he still is finding himself on the fourth line. And at this point, I completely agree with you. He should not be on that line. Honestly, I'd make more of a case for Jordan Greenway to be on that line. And as of right now, maybe, I don't know, maybe even Dylan Cousins. I don't know. I mean, he was on the fourth line at the end of last game. I'm not saying he has to be there like all game, but if you're going to put Krebs down there and he's one of your better players, rotate another guy in there. The lineup's already a mess as it is. It's like, who cares at this point?
You know what? And in, even earlier this season and last season, he's a playmaker. That's what he does. He would always try and make the hero pass. He'd try to make the perfect pass. I think he's finally found the perfect balance of when he knows when to make that really good pass or when he should take his time or just make the nice play. I think he's finally found that balance in his game, and he still gets no reward for it. Like in the past, sure, if you want to keep him on the fourth line so he could learn to calm down, to take the better play, fine. But now it's like he's been our best playmaker. I don't know. It's really frustrating.
Do you remember or did you listen to the post game after the Carolina game? Either of you? Did you listen to Don Granato's post game?
I don't think so.
No.
When they were talking about the Owen Power goal. Now I haven't listened to it since, but what I remember is that he was gushing about Benson on that play. That Benson's keeping on that play, the way that he got it behind the play, the way that he stuck with it, was able to keep the puck into the zone and get it behind the net. I remember Granato making that a point of emphasis. I really don't remember him talking about Krebs' patience, anything, or even Owen Power. I feel like he just kind of said, yeah, and then Power snuck into the slot and was able to fire it home. I think, actually, I'll ask you two a question. Who is the better player right now? Zach Benson or Peyton Krebs?
That's a good question.
How large of a game sample are we going off of?
Do not take player potential into this. I'm talking about right now.
Right now, I would say
right
Krebs.
now.
Early in the season, probably Benson, to be honest. But right now, it's Krebs.
Yeah, Benson's having that classic rookie season where it's a normal rookie season. It's really up and down. But yeah, right now it's Payne Krebs.
I think Don Granato, I don't even think it's, I think it's proven. He trusts Zach Benson more. I think
100%. Zach Benson hasn't been on the fourth line at all.
Yeah. I think that I think to an extent he's kind of, I think they kind of emulate each other. Like they're kind of that same small playmaking type. Now there's differences in their games, obviously, but I don't know. I feel like Krebs is just kind of lost in the shuffle with Don Granato, and I think we've found the player that every coach inevitably just does not like. Every coach has a player. Literally any sport, you name it, a coach has a player they just, for whatever reason, they do not like. I mean, Ralph Kruger had like 7, but no, most notably, it was Jeff Skinner. You want to look at newly fired Lindy Ruff, he had his fair share in his any tenure he had. This season it was Alex Holtz or even Timo Meyer. You go back a decade, it was Maxim Afinogenov or even Thomas Vanek at times. Even further back, Jeff Sanderson, you name it. Every coach has that player they just don't trust, don't like as much, don't like the way they play. I think we might have found Don Granato's. I think it just might be Peyton Krebs. He just doesn't see him as, or maybe he doesn't, maybe it's that he doesn't see him as something, but he just sees him as something else and just can't change the way, like we see Zemgus Girgensons as a 4th line winger. Like that just makes sense to us. Like it wouldn't make any sense to move him up in the lineup. I don't know. Maybe that's just how he sees Peyton Krebs.
I was actually going to say the same thing. That this is just Donnie's. It's just Donnie's guy that he isn't as high on as everybody else is. And I really got to wonder what like the other coaches or what the front office is thinking, just because Krebs has been very good recently, and I gotta imagine people disagree with how he's treating it. So I just gotta wonder how that sits with the rest of the organization and even Kevin Adams. I mean, that's if Donnie gets fired, this will be one of the reasons, no doubt.
Yeah, JP, I agree with you. I'm certain in my mind that there's probably something going on. Like, I mean, if I was in the front office, I'd be asking the same questions. I'd be like, why is he on the 4th line? Honestly, if they have meetings, I'm sure it's been brought up. And Granato probably has his reasons, but it seems like he's probably outnumbered in this situation.
Need I remind you, it is essentially the key piece in the Jack Eichel trade. Now, it shouldn't, you really shouldn't look at roster construction that way. You shouldn't be like, oh, I need to justify this trade. You do that, and suddenly you're trying to play Tage Thompson at 19 years old, trying to justify the Ryan O'Reilly trade. You find yourselves in that situation. But I can't help but think that there's got to be at least some thought process in the back of Kevin Adams' mind. Like, look, I got to kind of, this was the guy I wanted and held out for so long, and he's just kind of getting shafted. I wish he was given more opportunity. I don't know. It's one of those quirks you just got to live with. I mean, it's going to be, if Don Granato gets fired and someone else gets hired, it's going to be someone else. They're going to, it could be Lindy Ruff. As I said, he's always got that one guy that he just treats weirdly. It could be anybody. It could be Jack Quinn. It could be Dylan Cousins. Who knows? It's just, it stinks, but it's just kind of a quirk you kind of have to live with.
What makes it worse about this though is like in some of those situations with past coaches, and yeah, they have their guys they don't like, but usually it's for somewhat of a legitimate reason. Like maybe they're in a really bad slump, or maybe I don't know, they're just not playing up to the game. But Peyton Krebs has been one of your better players, which makes it even more confusing.
I would be willing to bet that Don Granato's, he probably won't say it, but his reason would probably be, look at his game log. He's not getting points. Like, I know he got one last night, and he got one on the power goal, but in the 6 games that line, Krebs, Benson, Peterka was a thing, they didn't get any points. Peterka went quiet. I'm sure he was looking at that. It's not I don't think it's fair. That goal, that line was still on the ice for some goals, but whatever. It's just it's annoying. I don't agree with it. I don't think anybody agrees with it, but it is what it is. Hopefully, you just gotta hope Krebs can fight his way out of it.
I really hope that's not the reason, considering, I love Benson, but he has not put up points at all like this whole season. So I really hope that's not a reason. It just amazes me how Donnie's given so many players, second, third chances, Middlestat, Tage, all these players that he's elevated so much and just refuses to elevate Krebs. So I don't know. I guess we'll see how the rest of the season finishes. Maybe once it's over, once we're officially out, he'll give him another chance. But I don't know. If it's frustrating.
Okay, I think that's enough talk of the Sabres storyline, the roster storylines, day-to-day stuff. I think we've spent enough time on that. Let's get into the fun stuff. So, trade deadline Friday. Let's go over just quickly some of the rumors circulating the team. Not much has changed. Most notably, we'll start off with Erik Johnson. So once again, kind of sounds like he's as good as gone. Teams are calling. There's been multiple reports. The only team that has really been thrown around, and even then it was kind of loosely, Jeff Merrick thought maybe the Calgary Flames would be a destination for him. But otherwise, I think the scenario everybody's looking at is Colorado, probably still, if there's a team that wants him. The Sabres scouts have been following them for a few weeks now. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Seems like he's going to be out the door. Obviously, we talked about him a bit earlier. On to the more interesting one. So, Kyle Okposo. If you would have asked me even a week ago if he gets traded, I probably would have said no. As nothing to do with the increase in wins or them playing better. I just would have thought they're going to hang on to their captain. They're probably not going to trade him. I don't even think he would maybe want to leave. His family lives here. I'm not so sure about that anymore. Friedman has mentioned it a few times. Jeff Merrick also. Kyle Okposo, I think there's a greater than 50% chance he's not going to be a Buffalo Sabre come Friday. There hasn't been many teams thrown around, but obviously we had that report about a month ago that Boston could be interested. And then currently it seems like the New York Rangers are the most, I guess, they're the most mentioned team to this point. You've got Friedman and Merrick talking about them.
And you also didn't Kyle pretty much kind of confirmed it last night? I think after the game, he was like, yeah, it was kind of emotional coming off the ice that it could have been my last game as a Sabre. So I think that pretty much confirms that he probably told Kevin, if the opportunity presents itself, I want to see if I can win a cup before my career ends, before he retires this offseason, most likely. So I would have never guessed it. I would have thought that he would stay. I mean, if you look at it from, a wider perspective, we'd be trading our captain. Like it's crazy to think about that. But
yeah.
It's looking like it. And it'll be interesting, if it's the Rangers, is Kako available? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that's the thing with.
I've been seeing that thrown around. It's,
yeah.
You look at it and right away you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they trade him? But, like hypothetically speaking, what would it take to get Capo Kako individually? I feel like the Rangers would want a second round pick.
I was gonna say
feel like,
second or
I
third.
feel like Kako's in the same spot as like Middlestat was 2 seasons ago, where it's like this guy is not living up to the hype. He can still be a useful player, but if a third round pick gets offered for him, you might take it. That's about his value. So it's like if you give Kyle Okposo and a third round pick to get Kako, I could see that. I don't think it's totally out of the realm of possibility, but would be I don't know. It would be an odd choice by the Rangers. They would have to be low on him, which would be a far cry from how high they were on him just a few summers ago.
And their fans.
Yeah. And I think like with these trades, like, even like how you said that we've been following Colorado, like you would imagine you'd probably just get a pick for Erik Johnson, but I wonder if Kevin's trying to get some players with these deals, like package, like we said, a third and Kyle Poster for Kako. Like I can't imagine he's just gonna take them for just like a fourth or a fifth round pick because that's all they would probably actually net. So I do think we are going to get someone coming back with these trades.
I hope so, Jameson. I really hope so because this organization has had a lot better luck with the players that they've traded for than the players that they've signed in free agency. Free agency is a lot more the Wild West. They just, I mean, it's like a numbers game, honestly. It's like one of them's got to work, right? But usually when you're trading, you could maybe get a better player at face value. In the off season, it's like, if you're a free agent and do you really want to come to Buffalo, New York to play for a team that's been out of the playoffs for 13 years? It kind of drives a lot of the high-end talent away. But you can get that high-end talent in a trade because you got to force them to come here. But yeah, I could also see something like that happening. I'm still holding firm on my prediction that we might see a player leave the roster that we weren't expecting. Whether that be perhaps a Jordan Greenway or a Casey Middlestat. Not saying it's going to be one of those two, but I think we're going to be in for a little bit of a surprise at some point.
I actually agree. I was going to say at some point that I think there's going to be some sort of surprise trade. And I don't think it's going to be anything big. Like, I don't think it'll be Mitts, but I feel like there will be some sort of surprise, whether we get someone or someone else gets sent out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we go down the list? Let's just go down the Sabres roster. Just give not moving or a chance of being traded. So I'll just go down the Sabres roster and let's just give out our thoughts. So Dylan Cousins, is he going to get traded?
Nope.
Okay.
At the deadline, no.
Zach Benson.
No.
Tage Thompson.
No.
Rasmus Dahlin.
No.
Owen Power.
No.
Ryan Johnson.
No.
Matthias Samuelsson and Jack Quinn, probably not.
Nope.
JJ Peterka.
Mm-mm.
Okay, here's an interesting one. Alex Tuck. Now, I would not bring this up, but teams have been calling on him. Kevin Adams doesn't want to discuss a trade.
If I had to put percentages on these, I'm going with 7.5% chance that he's moved. It would have to be an extremely good deal that you just couldn't turn down.
Yeah, I was going to say they'd have to give us a haul. Like, I think, first of all, I think the fan base would be up in arms if we traded, half this fan base's future captain. I don't even see why we'd do that, to be honest.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Mm-mm. If you asked me 2 months ago, yes. Now, no.
Sell him high. I'm just kidding.
I was thinking about it because, goalies are
gamble.
Voodoo. Goalies are voodoo. His value will probably never be higher. You're walking into an off season where A, he needs a new contract, and B, he's arbitration eligible. I don't know. I just think, I think if the right deal is there, if there is a team desperate for goaltending, I think you should look at it.
Give me 10%.
Only because you have the Devin Levi safety net. Now, I know if there's any, big Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen fans out there, I know that this is probably, I don't know. I get that might seem crazy. I'm just, goalies are voodoo. Okay, I would have never predicted he would get to this point. And next season, what are the chances he repeats this? Now, I'm not saying he's going to go back to what he was last year, but he'll probably regress a bit. Look at Linus Allmark this year. He might get moved at the deadline. He won the Vezina last year. Anything can happen, but I'd probably put it at like 2%. It's kind of an Alex Tuck situation. Victor Olofsson.
I hope for his sake, but he has no value. He has absolutely no value.
I was going to say, I would say 100% chance, but it's like Who wants him?
We have to retain
Full 50.
all of his value. I mean all of his contract.
I think he has around 60%. I think because he's a UFA this year, I think a team will bite. When they were trying to move him last year, I think it was kind of. I mean, you look at the last two deadlines that maybe he could have been moved. Last year, he had another year left on a pretty expensive deal. And then the year before that, I mean, right before the deadline, he had that huge scoring drought. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they got a team to bite this year.
Give me 55% chance. Little over than half. Little over half.
If he does, it'll be like the Asplund trade where Kevin's really happy that we got a 7th rounder because that's probably all we could actually get.
A 7th rounder, like at the time, 3 years from now.
Eric Robinson.
No. That's not good.
And
We traded
well,
for him for future considerations.
He's
We're
been
not gonna get
good.
anything.
He's been good.
No,
He's-
he has
He's been
been.
really good.
I don't think you're
actually,
gonna get anything.
I think I am very much open to bringing him back next year.
I mean,
I think
I
he
could-
gives you more than, I think he gives you more than a Lucas Rusek or a Brandon Biro, like anybody. And you're like, this guy's an NHL player, and he's fitting really well here.
yeah,
Connor Clifton.
no one's taking that contract.
Yeah, no, sorry.
I thought about it though, like if Ilya Lyubushkin could get a 3rd round pick, and he's gotten a 3rd and a 4th these last 8 months. Connor Clifton, for as much as I've criticized him, he's better than Ilya Lyubushkin.
Yeah,
I think if they really looked for a partner, I think they could do it. But yeah,
you
I'll
have to
probably
do
put
some
it-
really
put it at
deep
a zero.
searching there.
0%. All right, Jacob Bryson.
Maybe you throw him in and package him in a trade. Like, I don't think he's a main piece if you trade him. And if it is, it's going to be an Asplund trade.
I would say no, only because they kind of need NHL bodies right now.
Yeah.
And, especially Johnson's going to be out the door soon. It's kind of funny. Riley Stillman might be their deadline ad on defense for the 2nd year in a row. 'Cause he's probably going to get called up.
Good for
Or-
him.
Clegg's been called up before him, but I know what you
True.
mean.
True. Here's an interesting one. Eric Comrie.
I mean, again, if someone called you, this is the same thing with Bryson or Robinson. If someone called you, I would not like go out and waste my time searching for a trade partner for these guys. But if someone called you and was like, we could do this, then maybe we could formulate a deal. So I could see it happening. But again, UFA in the offseason, it's like real like who needs a backup goalie? Who needs a goalie other than the Devils right now?
All right. Jordan Greenway.
I will be very upset if they do.
I could see it. I could see it.
I would be very upset. I think
Give
he's
me-
been very good for us.
I just can't see it. I feel like the only connection you've seen is Vancouver. I think they've probably just been calling about him. I really he's the exact type of guy. You listen, if they have an offer, I don't know.
Give me.
I just don't.
Go ahead, Jonah.
I don't know. I just feel like, if you were to trade him, like if Vancouver, like if you're going to trade with Vancouver, you can't do picks for this guy. It's got to be, you got to get something back substantial in return.
Elias Pettersson.
It would have to be like a Niels Hoglander or I don't know. If Kuzmenko was still on the team, maybe I'd consider him, but obviously he got dealt. I just don't see. I'm putting this at like a 10%. I don't think he's getting moved.
Give me 16.725%.
Okay.
It's a little
I don't-
specific, but
Not a 0.274%.
that's too low.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Peyton Krebs.
I would hate this. This would probably be the one I'd hate the most. Just because we know how he's been playing, and it's like you put him with you put him with the good guys. He plays really well, but if there was a trade in place for him, hopefully it would be with a team who has seen him play up to that potential and know that the Sabres are misusing him and maybe could give us something a little more in return. But I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say not at the deadline. I wouldn't say 0% chance. I'd probably say around like 15. But
Don't do it, Kevin. Don't do it. Stay strong. Stay strong. We like him.
we'll know in a few days.
Yeah, there was that smoke around Lawton, so maybe they've gotten calls about him. I don't know. It feels like the Krebs dilemma is very much a Don Granato related thing. So I mean, maybe Don Granato probably has input on roster moves and such, but I don't know. I feel like the front office probably backs him a bit more than Granato does. So I'm gonna put that probably around 10-15% as well. Zemgus Girgensons. Now, if you would have asked me, like I said with Oak Post, if you would have asked me last week if he would have been traded, I would have said yes. I would have thought he was the guy to go. Okposo being the captain, he would have been the one to stay. Now, in my opinion, I feel like they're kind of flipped. I feel like Girgensons is going to ride this out. It doesn't feel like his name has really been brought up as much.
It's kind of weird because I feel like he would be a really good fourth line player for a contender and a good penalty killer. And I don't know, like I don't know why he wouldn't ask out. I mean, he's definitely loyal. He's been with us for a while, but take your chance somewhere else. But I agree. It doesn't seem like it's gonna happen, but I'm surprised by that. And it would be crazy if they did. If they trade Okposo and Girgensons, that we trade two of our captains at the deadline, like that would be nuts.
He's the loyal Latvian. I feel like he's just got Stockholm syndrome at this point. It's like we've held him captive for so long. He knows nothing else and he'll never go anywhere else, nor does he want to. But this could be something that Jonah, this could be something that they want you to think, man. They're flipped. No, they're not. They're not. Zemgus Girgensons had a few goals in the past few games. Stock, stock is ticking up a little bit.
I will say,
heating up.
Okposo and Girgensons have played pretty good the past week or so. If they both ask for a trade, then there's a good reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably go with like a 40% chance. I think it's less than likely, but I think it's very much in play.
Yeah, I'll stick with a 40.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of all of our veterans. We'd we'd get so much younger because we'd probably just call guys up. Like it'd actually be kind of funny. And we'd have like no fourth line players then.
Kyle Okposo. What percentage are you putting him at?
75.
65.
I think I'm gonna go 80. I don't know. I feel like if you got Friedman repeatedly talking about it, you got him saying this very well could have been his last game. I don't know. It just feels like there's something there, and he's definitely a guy that can provide something to a playoff team. So I don't know.
He wants to go out on top.
I think he wants another kick at the can. It's gonna stink. I mean, people are gonna hate him for a very long time. He's gonna have that bad stigma attached to him that he wasn't able to get it done here. I just feel so bad for the guy. I mean, he could have, taken his ball, gone home after he nearly died a few years ago, or even after the COVID season when he probably had his worst season as a Sabre during a time when the franchise was at its lowest and he had another head injury that season. He didn't. He came back, was determined to turn around the culture. He did. Had a great season, scored 20 goals for the first time as a Sabre, got named captain. He just wasn't able to get it done. Now, I think it's gonna haunt him for a long time that it was just out of his control. He just couldn't get it done.
Just give him the front office job, man. He could be like the Roberto Luongo of the Sabres. Just if you were to trade him, you should have a discussion with him and be like, "Hey, we'll trade you, play out the rest of the season, see how it goes. You got a job waiting for you when you get back. Honestly, that's probably the best situation for his family too, because then he could just be like, I gotta, it's just a long work trip at that point. He's just like, I gotta go out, play for a couple months. I'll be back, and then it's over.
And finally, Erik Johnson, who I am going to give a
Get him out of here.
99.999%.
Get him out of here.
I think he's played his last game
I
for the Sabres.
think it's 100%.
Get him out of here.
I'm not sure what a contender would see in him, but you do you.
Watch him do like the Bogosian thing where he goes to a contender, kicks ass, and helps win another cup. Speaking of Bogosian, he might get extended in Minnesota.
Oh my God. Could you?
That
He's
guy.
been playing good there. Apparently, he's been playing real good.
When he
Never played
finished
good
his
here.
tenure with the Sabres, if you would have told someone he would have played, 5-6 more years, he would have gotten a cup or two, and he'd be extended, we would have thought you were like on drugs. Like, what?
Guy's like
good
a
for him.
cockroach.
What a turnaround. Good for him. He was part of the Sabres failure. So good for him. We failed him.
All right, so that's the entire Sabres roster. Now, I mean, we could go into like prospects and stuff, but I don't really see the point of putting a percentage and all that. So, final podcast before the deadline. I'm just going to open the floor, hopes or maybe even a prediction. What's going to go down Friday, or what do you want to go down Friday?
Well, my wildest hopes would be get as much as you can from all your UFAs, whether that be draft capital or maybe like quality fourth line replacements. What I think is going to happen is it's going to be Kyle Oposo will get moved. One of Krebs, Greenway, or Girgensons or Robinson may also get moved. And the biggest thing I could see coming out of this deadline is probably like the equivalent of the Jordan Greenway trade last year. You'll get some small stuff here and there trickling in, nothing to get too hyped over. The fan base on Twitter will go up in arms as they always do every single deadline when all the other teams are making moves and everyone's screaming at the front office to do something. And then they do, and it's okay, and everyone shuts up, and then the season ends.
Yeah, I would say, like I said earlier, I think there's going to be some sort of surprise. So just surprise me, like Christian said, like the Greenway trade of last year. And if that's, Okposo's really going to the Rangers, then go get Kako. He needs a change of scenery, and I think he could be good. But, just get as much as you can out of any of your players and, maybe surprise us. Maybe that Jordan Greenway trade of last year will be a defenseman. Like, that is our need. So I don't know. We'll see. I am looking forward to it though, because I think with the trades made, there's going to be some corresponding roster moves, like from the Amerks. So we'll see what happens.
I just have, I don't know. I guess it's probably my own hopes, but I don't know. I just got this feeling like I feel like something's going to come across Adam's desk. I mean, we were so close to being the team to get Chychrun last year. Adams put in these same offers Ottawa did, just with a lighter protection or a heavier protection on the first round pick. Arizona correctly took Ottawa's. They got the higher pick. They got their guy. I don't know. I just feel like every deadline, there's that one trade that just comes out of nowhere. Last year, it was Tanner Jeannot getting 5 picks, or even the Rasmus Sandin trade. I don't know. I just feel like I think Adams might be the one to be a part of that this year. Just some big trade or sizable trade that develops seemingly out of thin air at the deadline. I don't know. Maybe they somehow get Pavel Buchnevich. I mean, that's like a dream scenario, but I don't know. I think he's going to make at least one. I think they're going to try to do another Greenway move where they just try to get a player that helps them out in a certain area. They're gonna do something. I would be surprised if he does not add to this roster, like in a pretty decent, like with a quality piece. Now I think my hopes, I would send out every UFA imaginable. I just would. I would send out Johnson, Gergensons, even I would send out Olofsson, and I actually do kind of hope they send out Okposo. I think it would officially usher in it would affect that room. And I think it's the type of effect I kind of want. Like,
Good point.
Dad's gone. He's not here. Rasmus, this is your room now. Tage, Tuck, Dylan, it's your time. Like, you guys got to step up. You need to step up now. There are literally no other veterans in that room if Okposo goes and if Gergensons goes. Like, there's no one there.
It would be Jeff Skinner.
It would just be Jeff
Skinner would be the veteran.
So I'm almost kind of rooting for that. It would almost be like it would be Dahlin's tryout as captain. And I don't know. Like, I just want to see. Screw it. Like, let's have some fun with the end of the season. Keep winning. Try and win as much as possible. I really don't want to fire Don Granato. I really don't. But he's kind of forcing our hand, it feels like. But to get back to the trade talk, like, I think Okposo leaving, it would usher in the Rasmus Dahlin era. It would now be his team. All right. So, as I've mentioned quite a few times, trade deadline on Friday, 3:00. Hopefully it should be a fun one. The Sabres have their fair share of guys that they can move. They have all the draft capital, all the resources in the world to try and make a move to help themselves out. Hopefully something fun happens. Fun in a good way. Hopefully they fleece someone. It's been a good while since a Kevin Adams fleece.
The last big fleece was probably the Risto trade.
Was it?
That was a big one. Yeah, that was a get a first rounder and change.
You got a 4th round pick for Ilya Lyubushkin. Take their full contract.
Not bad.
So, not bad on that one. All right. So let's hop around the NHL, and I need to talk about something that I didn't want to talk about. I didn't ever want to talk about this. I didn't ever want this day to come, but
the dream is dead.
Elias Pettersson has extended with the Vancouver Canucks for 8 years.
On a good deal.
I ask you to please respect my privacy at this time. This has deeply affected me. I was so excited last week when it seemed like the tension between him and Vancouver was at an all-time high. My dreams are crushed.
Hey, Eichel signed an extension that got traded, a few years later. There's your best hope, but
it's true. It's true. They could have done it. Maybe they've just done the heavy lifting for us.
Exactly. And for the Sabres' sake, obviously, I wanted Pettersson, but also for your sake, you've been saying this since we started this podcast. You've been saying this for years, that it could be, we'd be the team to make the move. So it does hurt.
You never know. You never know what could happen.
Yeah.
It just might take some more time.
You never know. Let's we'll divert our attention to getting Kirill Kaprizov to come here.
Yes.
Now the other thing with the Pettersson news, which was kind of a whole part of this whole negotiation, basically the Vancouver Canucks, they were sick of waiting. They wanted an answer, so they decided to. I'm gonna call it. They pulled a bluff. So the Carolina Hurricanes approached them about a trade, like a serious, like they gave an offer. It's not known exactly what it was, but Marty Necas was supposedly part of it. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, picks, you name it. Nobody knows the exact details. They bring this to Pettersson saying like, hey, we have a trade offer. Like, we want an answer now. Now, I think that Pettersson could have called their bluff because there was no world where they were ever going to trade him. But he didn't. He extended. Obviously, he's going to be there for a long time now. I just thought it was interesting that it got to that point that a team actually made an offer.
That would have been scary. Imagine if Carolina got him.
It's about time. Uh, I like my idea. Offer sheet him. That's something that Carolina has been known for. Maybe they would have done that again. Who knows?
Jeez,
But
they would have what, like 5 first-round picks for $11 million?
mhm.
Would have been a lot. Would have been a lot.
How much did Kaniemi give up when they offer sheeted him?
Was it 5? It was like 5 million for a year or 6. They gave him a high number for 1 year just so they could get him, and then they extended him at a lower amount. It was something like that. It was
Did they
actually
give
kind
up
of a
any
smart play.
picks?
Yeah, they gave up picks. I just don't recall. Maybe it was a first, or no, it was a first, a second, and a third. I'm pretty sure, because then Montreal used those picks to flip for what was the centerman? He played for Arizona. What was his name? Oh, this is killing me. Who did they trade for him?
Liam O'Brien.
No, it wasn't Leo O'Brien. Montreal Canadiens. Ross. This is killing me. Who was it? This is gonna kill me. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Christian Dvorak. That's who it was. So they used those picks to flip for him. I remember that. So yes, the dream is dead for now. We'll just have to wait. That's all we got to do. We just got to wait. Vancouver will flame out. It'll happen. Maybe they'll have another bad season next year. We'll see how it plays out. Moving on, we got our first big domino to fall, the first big trade leading up to the deadline with one of the bigger targets on people's trade boards. Chris Tanev is headed to the Dallas Stars. He gets traded for, well, it was actually a 3-way trade. Calgary doesn't get their first-round pick in the deal. They get a second and a prospect. So Tanev is the first big domino to fall. And I think that just made a stacked Dallas team just even more of a contender. I think now they got one of the best shut down D in the league.
Yeah, good move by both sides. Calgary needed to do it. They probably weren't going to get the first, so Dallas, they made a good trade.
And then I guess kind of the second notable move, Ilya Lyubushkin is back in the Atlantic Division. He gets dealt to the Leafs. So we joked about Kevin Adams somehow getting a 4th-round pick for him last summer. The Leafs trade a 3rd-round pick to get him at a reduced price.
Panic move.
So they
Seems
missed out.
like it.
They seemingly missed out on Tanev, revert their efforts back to bringing Lyubushkin back, which is funny. I don't know if you guys know this, but when they traded for Lyubushkin 2 years ago, they gave up a 2nd-round pick. That pick they still haven't used yet. So technically, they've traded a 2nd and a 3rd for Lyubushkin, in a sense.
Oh, so it was a 2nd-round pick in like 2024.
I think
at
it's
the
this
time?
year. I think it's this year.
Okay.
So they've kind of screwing themselves out of 2 rounds just to get the same guy back.
Yeah,
Go
and
look at his player card.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, he's
2nd and a
having
3rd for that.
Yeah, he's not having the greatest season. I think he struggled last year in Buffalo. I don't think he's doing much better in Anaheim. But that's not where the story ends, because his first game in Toronto, phenom Matt Rempe decides to take a run at him. It has caused a lot of discourse, but rams Lyubushkin into the boards and seemingly gives him a head injury. We didn't really talk about this last episode. What are your guys' thoughts on, I guess, Rempe mania?
I feel like it's like a Linsanity run. It'll flame out. I mean, I guess maybe people like the aggression back into the game, but this thing has a shelf life, and if he doesn't stop, I'm sure the organization will have to like curb this behavior a little bit, because you saw him in practice the other day. He had that black eye and everything. It's like, this doesn't usually end the best. So
I was going to say, go look at his face. He's taken a beating. Well, he's fought in 5 of his 7 games. I get being physical, but I feel like that's I don't know, a little much. He's only 21. Like I'm not. I don't know. Don't wreck your brain now. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you should ever wreck your brain, but don't do it when you're 21 years old and you just enter the league. But at the same time, he's trying to make a name for himself. So I get why he's doing it. I just not sure it's right. And I don't know. I know Jonah was at the game, but I'm not sure if Christian saw it. But Marty and Rob Ray were kind of going at it about this topic on the pregame show last night. Marty was just like asking genuine questions.
Can I ask which side was Rob Ray on?
Yeah, you could expect. Razor's the one who got a little heated. Marty was just asking questions, and Marty was like, I kind of get it, and I think he kind of backed off, but I don't know. It was kind of funny.
That's his domain.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
Marty gets in one fight where he gets his ass kicked, and suddenly he's an expert on fighting. Yeah, they gotta calm him down. I think the Ryan Reeves fight, it's a good, close the book. That's your peak. I mean, just look at the guy's face. He's been through enough. He just needs to. They gotta shut that down. Like he can't be fighting the best enforcers in the league. I mean, he fought Nick Delorier, Ryan Reeves in 1 week. He got his clock cleaned, and whoever he fought against Columbus. It's just, it's fun, for the first few, as long as everybody's okay. It just, it's already a dying it's kind of a dying art. I don't think you need to have a 21-year-old taking part of it who's trying to find his place in the league too. All right, moving on to some bigger news, more surprising news. Evgeni Kutznetsov was placed on waivers. Kind of out of nowhere. He's been in the player assistance program for a little bit now. As soon as he got taken out of that, the Caps decided to put him on waivers and give him a fresh start in the AHL. So definitely a surprise there. I mean, Kuznetsov, talking about a few years ago, one of the most exciting players in the league and Cup champion, probably arguably could have won the Conn Smythe on that run with the Capitals, and he's kind of fallen pretty far.
He fell off pretty hard in the last couple of years. He's just a shootout specialist now.
If there's any solace in the fact of him being waived, we don't have to watch that damn move anymore.
That's true. We complained early in the season about how much money we got on the AHL. They got like double what we got down there now just because of him. He's like $8 million just sitting on their AHL team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was listening to, it was actually 32 Thoughts. Supposedly there was a Kuznetsov for Matt Duchene deal in the works last offseason before Duchene got bought out. So that would have been interesting. Kuznetsov would have gone to Nashville, and that would have been, trying to reunite him with Barry Trotz.
I forgot Duchene got bought out.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Where is he now? Is he not playing?
In Dallas.
Right now?
In Dallas.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's in Dallas. Yeah.
All right. I guess just kind of getting a wider look at the NHL. I think it's going to be interesting because, we've heard a lot of rumors. We've got Jacob Markstrom seemingly is just going to be a New Jersey Devil someday. The Pittsburgh Penguins, that's a crazy, I guess, ending for them. I mean, what a disaster of a road trip that was.
Yeah.
That Vegas game, the Sabres Vegas game ends, and then immediately I'm scoreboard watching, and that Calgary game, they had it. They were out shooting them. It was 25-10 at one point, and they have the 3-1 lead in the third period, and it just falls out of their hands. Nazem Kadri scores the goal of the year. They score 15 seconds later, and then Chris Letang with a brutal giveaway with less than a minute to go, and Calgary wins it in regulation. And 2 nights later, or 1 night later, they get their asses kicked by Edmonton. So it's crazy to think how. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a Sidney Crosby team sell at the deadline?
They haven't been sellers since 2006. the last time we won a playoff series. That's how long it's been. It has been 18 years.
And the Washington Capitals are they're kind of where they were last year, where they're probably gonna be on the more seller side. So, man, when's the last time those two teams have sold off at the same time? Probably even longer.
Been a long time, man. But it happens to every team at some point. Happens to some teams more often than others. But um the Pens have had one of the other than the Detroit Red Wings making the playoffs 25 straight times. Um I mean, arguably the Penguins have had a better run. They've had 3 cups in that time. But the Red Wings have had what, one, two, three, four in that span. So similar, but every every dynasty must come to an end at some point. And I think this is a wrap on the Penguins. They're gonna have to
It's a
start a
tough
rebuild.
spot. It's a
They're gonna have
real
to
tough
start a rebuild
spot.
at some point. What are they gonna do with Erik Karlsson? Are they just gonna?
I don't know.
Does he want to be there?
I think he does. I think, you're playing with. I mean, I'll say this right now. I think if you go by definition of the award, I think Sidney Crosby should win the Hart. Now, I don't
Well,
think he's
yeah.
been. I don't think he's been the best player. I think McKinnon, Kucherov, McDavid, Matthews, they've all been, I think, better. But I mean, Crosby is carrying that team. Did you see that stat the other night? They have had 29 skaters play for them this season. Only 17, or is it only 17, or is it 17? It's either one or the other. They have as many goals as Tristan Jarry. Like,
Uh, Top heavy lineup, eh?
crazy. It's crazy. It's gonna be interesting to watch them. It's gonna be interesting to watch. It's also gonna be interesting to watch the New Jersey Devils because Lindy Ruff, they booted him out of there. They actually did it with a month to go in the season in the thick of a playoff race.
Scapegoat.
Yeah. Well, now the Devils fans will have nothing to complain about when they're getting shit pumped by another team again. Uh,
It
then
actually
they just
pisses me off so much.
blame it on Lindy Ruff. Like
I
those fans are, oh God, it's just, do you understand how bad your goaltending is? How much of that could you put on the coach? I'm sure he made some questionable lineup decisions, but it's like,
who's
come
the
on.
who's the best goalie they've had since he's taken over? He took over, I think, in the COVID season. Is Vitek Vanacek the best goalie they've had during that stretch? He's been arguably their
Probably.
worst this year. It actually pisses me off so much. And I know obviously it's Sabres bias showing, but watching that team from the outside, like that is a team. They lost Damon Severson. They lost Tomas Tatar, Ryan Graves, 3 of their best players last year, gone in free agency. Dougie Hamilton, a Norris caliber defenseman, out for the season. And then you have injuries to Jack Hughes, to Nico Hischier, to Timo Meyer. I think he's been playing hurt the entire season. All of that, yeah, and they're still, and they're above 500. They're still in the race, and because of eight, Vitek Vanacek, Nico Dawes, Akira Schmid, that is an awful, awful goaltending trio. Probably the worst in the league. It's terrible. It's they had 53 shots on the Ducks. 53. They lost. They lost that game. The Ducks had 20 shots. I mean, it's insane that they put the blame on Lindy. I actually cannot believe it. That because I follow some Devils accounts online. The one of them had they were hyped. They were beyond excited. And as you guys know, I have a Devils friend who he grew up in Buffalo, so he's like a half Sabres fan, but he's a Devils fan. And I've been trying to tell him about this, and I've gotten him on my side where he's like, yeah, this he's a scapegoat. It's so obvious to me. And you watch, they'll get the new coach boost. Travis Green will get them into a playoff spot. Suddenly, their save percentage will spike to 930. And they'll be like, see, we're better off without Lindy Ruff. Ah, that makes me so mad. That makes me mad.
Does he get another head coaching job? I feel like he's getting old. Am I wrong?
He's talked about doing, I think, a front office job before. I wonder if he makes the Barry Trotz transition.
Bring him
But
back in some capacity. That'd be fun.
Inevitably, we do need to have the conversation. Should the Sabres consider bringing Lindy Ruff back?
Yeah, you should always consider it. I don't know if it'd be the right fit at the time, but um, first you got to fire Don Granato if you want him as a coach. But I wouldn't mind it.
I don't think we should bring him back as the head coach. You could bring him. I'd be fine bringing him back as an assistant, front office. I don't think we should bring him back as the
He
head
wouldn't
coach.
take an
That
he
would
wouldn't
be-
take an assistant
No,
job.
I actually do think that maybe he would. I just think that would be an awful dynamic. I feel like that would be
Terrible.
so uncomfortable for Don Granato. Imagine you're Don Granato. You're the head coach of the team, and then suddenly they bring back the greatest coach in the team's history to be your assistant. This is literally the plot to Remember the Titans. Remember that? They bring, they got the head coach. He steps down as an assistant, and so, everybody wants him to be the head coach in instead of Denzel Washington. Like, that's how it goes. That would be the dynamic. As soon as he gets hired, people would be asking for Don to get fired. There'd be no point. He'd be a lame duck head coach the second he walked in the doors.
I wasn't saying to be under Donnie. I was saying if we bring on some more coaching changes. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Listen, the thing about Lindy Ruff is I think he would be the perfect. Like, he is literally what the Sabres need. Top 5 in wins all time. Has the experience. Has gotten a younger core to the playoffs recently. It's just he used to be the Sabres coach for a long time, and I really hate the idea of retreads. And I also imagine that doesn't work out. Like, imagine it crashes and burns. Imagine how that looks on the organization. Like, you've been out of the playoffs for 13 years. Oh, what was your brilliant idea to get back in? Let's bring back our ex-head coach from a decade ago. And then it doesn't work out, and you look even more incompetent. Also, from a legacy standpoint, I am kind of nervous. Like, look at what being a head coach did to Phil Housley's legacy as a Sabre alum.
Yeah, put a little blemish on it.
That guy was loved. Everybody loved him.
We still do.
Yeah, I mean, time heals a lot of wounds, but I don't know. I guess I'd be nervous if this Lindy tenure did kind of end bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Things to consider. We're gonna have the coaching conversation as time goes on here, inevitably. I think I've made up my mind, but if suddenly they have a strong finish, you never know. Things can always change. But I think that's pretty much going to do it for this one. Trade deadline on Friday. We'll speak to you sometime after that, just to kind of look ahead at the Sabres schedule here. They are in Toronto on Wednesday night. Then they immediately play Nashville the next night. That's at 8 p.m. Saturday, they play the Oilers. Connor McDavid's in town. They'll play them at 12:30. And then their next game after that, big game against the Red Wings on Tuesday. So I imagine that we'll talk to you after that Oilers game. It'll just be me and Christian. JP, this is his last episode for a little time here. We'll be going back to me and Christian for a little bit. But
Yep.
But looking ahead, I think we're going to do a mailbag episode next time. Maybe. Depends if there's a loaded docket. If the Sabres made like 3-4 trades, that's going to be a lot to cover. But I think we're going to do a mailbag, kind of gather some thoughts and have some fun things to talk about. So stay tuned for that. But in any case, this should be a fun week. Hopefully it's a fun week. Hopefully there's some fun hockey to watch. But if you guys don't have anything left to say, I think that will pretty much do it for this one. If you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us at the Sabre Report. Follow us on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok. If you want updates for the pod, follow us at Sabre Report Pod. Give our friends over at the Buffalo Sports Talk podcast a listen. We are nearing free agency and draft time for the NFL, and they'll be covering a lot of that. But other than that, JP, if you want to give your last address before the trade deadline and a big stretch of this season.
Just go Sabres. That's all I got to say. Said enough.
All right.
Simple man.
On that, go Sabres.
Go Sabres.
Go Sabres.